Okay, so a couple of things I want to mention here up front. This is a pre-manufactured floor, so there are manufacturer's installation instructions. You must read and understand those instructions. Sure, otherwise you're going to end up pulling up your floors just like I did. Because they're not going to hold down, you're going to have problems, they're going to buckle, all kinds of things. So read the manufacturer's instructions before you start. Next thing you have to do after reading the manufacturer's instructions, you have to figure out where to start. What part of your floor to start in. You want to start where the tongue of the board is against near the wall. You can't work in reverse. You have to, that tells you this is where the installer ended, where the tongue was against the wall. So in my case, the installer ended up here. So I started there pulling out boards and worked backwards. Then when you get to the end and you're all done leveling your floor, putting the underlayment back down, then you have to install it back the same way, and then you end here. And the reason you have to do that is because this is tongue and groove. If you're going to nail the floor, toenail the floor like this so you don't see the screws, you have to go in this direction, because once you get this down, nail this down, the next board slides into it. You can't go in reverse, you can't go this way, because you would be adding a board, you would be sliding a tongue into the groove. And once you do that, you can't nail down the tongue anymore. So the only way to nail down the tongue like this is to come from this direction and go that way. So that's the story. So you figure out where you're going to start. And another giveaway for where you're going to start is if you see a wall where there's a board, only a partial width board, that's probably where the installer ended, because he's not going to start by cutting off a board smaller. He's going to start with a full width board. And then when he gets to the end, he doesn't have any room, he's going to cut it. So that's the deal on that. The other way to figure out, of course, is after you pull the baseboards off, you'll see where the tongue side of the board is, which wall it's against. Then you know that's where you got to start. Okay, so you start by removing the baseboards. The way you do that is you take a utility knife like this, you go along the baseboard, you want to break the bond between the caulking and the paint on your wall. The reason you do that is we don't want to damage anything, and we don't want to have to repaint our walls. So if you do a good job at that, you won't have to repaint your walls. So you see this wall here? No paint missing. So that's good. Okay. So first you break that bond. Next thing you do is you drive your putty knife behind the board. You can use a hammer and tap it in. You just tap it in to make a little space. The next thing you do is you take your big flat crowbar, you slide it in there like that, down as far as possible, and you start prying out. And the brads will pop right out of the wall. Most of the time the brads will stay in the baseboard. Sometimes they'll be in the wall, but it's easy to get rid of those. What you do is you use these pliers, you just grab them and you twist them and they'll pop right out. Same thing with these baseboards. Baseboards here, if there's a brad here, see this hole, there was a brad here. I just grab it like this and twist it, and it pops out from the back. If you do that, you'll take it out without any marks on the front of your baseboard. It's like they were never there. So it works great. The last thing you do is you label the baseboards. See, back wall. I've got this one here labeled left front closet. Okay, I have a whole pile of these downstairs all labeled. So then you know where they all go back together again. Okay, so next we have to start pulling out some floorboards. We have to get started somewhere. So the best thing to do is find a small board because what you need to do is you're going to need room to get this pry bar under the rest of the floor so you can pry them out without damaging them. But you got to start somewhere. So what I did is I found a board in a corner, not this one of course, and I got a lag bolt, drilled a hole, screwed the lag bolt in like that, and then you use your pry bar and you just pry it and pry it and pry it, and soon it'll come loose. It takes some work, but it will come loose. And once you get one board out, the rest are easier because then you can get this pry bar underneath the other boards and you keep working them. Kind of like when you're a kid, you pulled the tooth. You got to keep wiggling it until they finally start to pop up. And you shouldn't really do much damage to them. You might hear some cracking and things, some minor cracks in the tongues you can live with. Don't worry about throwing the board away if you crack the tongue. Because once you screw everything down and you put it together tight, the floor is going to be very tight and quiet, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, the next thing you have to do is, probably even before you do this, or you can do it now, is to make yourself a map. So you start numbering the boards as you take them out. And you make a map so you know where to put them back in again. In this case, I started over here because this is the part of the room that the guy installer ended, so I had to start here. And this is my floor here in front of the door, and this is my closet. The B stands for bad. I had to break some boards to get them out. Once I got past there, then I was able to get boards out without damaging. So all along the front here is where 1, 2, and 3 will be. And of course you number the back of the boards. I'll show you, I have a lay down area over here where I keep my boards until I get back to reinstalling them. And you can see they have numbers on the back. So I can reinstall all these. And when I lay them down, I always make sure it's finished side to finished side and unfinished side to unfinished side. Otherwise, the nubs from the little staples will mess up the surface of your boards. You don't want to do that. So that's the deal with the boards. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is demonstrate to you how easy it is to get rid of these staples. Now, if you have cleats in your floor, I can't help you. I've never done this with cleats. I don't know if these nippers are strong enough to snap off cleats or not, but it is able to snap off these staples. So the way it works is you put your nippers on a staple like that. This is an old junk board I got. The tongue is all shot, as you can see, but just to demonstrate. So I got the nippers on the staple like that. Next thing you do is you put a rag over the top, because these things will fly and you don't want any more work than you have to going chasing pieces of metal around, and you definitely don't want it under your floor when you start to reinstall it. So simple as that. You just take this and throw it away, and you do the same with the other ones. So these work great. This makes it a pretty easy job compared to other things that I tried. I tried cutting them off with a jigsaw. That was a mess. This is the fastest way, and there's no metal shavings. So okay, now we're going to talk about the nastiest, dirtiest part of the job. Once you have the floor pulled up, and you pull up the underlayment here, you're going to have the subfloor exposed, and it's going to be either OSB or plywood. In my case, unfortunately, it was OSB, which I explained to you a minute ago why that's not the greatest thing to have underneath a hardwood floor. But so what you do is you use your marking pens, your magic markers here, and you use your level, and you find the high spots and low spots of your subfloor. And you have to get rid of the high spots. Now, the floor doesn't have to be perfectly level. In my case, for this floor, it said 3/16 of an inch in 7 feet is acceptable. So I could put this level on the floor, and if there was a gap of 3/16 under it, that was okay. If it was higher than that, then I had to take the floor down. Now, on the bedroom, the original room where we were in the beginning, I used a sander. Actually, I used a number of sanders, but there was so much to take down that it was a very dirty, time-consuming, messy job. Sawdust everywhere. So what I did in this floor is I went and bought a planer. This planer will take down anywhere between a 1/24 of an inch all the way up to 1/8 of an inch in one pass. The knob on the front adjusts, so you can adjust between 1/24 and 1/8. And it worked fine. And like I said, I hooked my vacuum hose up to the exhaust, and all the sawdust and wood chips went right into my shop vac. So it worked good. It was pretty fast because a planer will take down a lot more in one shot than a sander will. Plus you have sandpaper, it gets clogged, it was just a headache. So this worked great. You just have to be careful not to take down too much to create another problem for yourself. So once you're done and you have the floor within specs again, then you can put your underlayment back on and patch up the holes or whatever that were in there when you pulled it out. It might have some staples that you couldn't get out and you didn't know were there, and you just pull it, made a little hole, so not a big deal. In my case, I decided to use the same underlayment that I had before. I evaluated the options. There are a lot of different types of underlayments. Part of it depends on what kind of a floor you have. This worked. This was what we chose in the beginning, and we didn't really see a good reason to pull it up and try a different type of underlayment. The other thing is underlayments come in thicknesses, and if you go messing around with another underlayment, it might be different thickness, then you got transition problems when you come to the end of the floor and you want to join up with, say, your hall or something where you're not removing the boards. So you want to try to keep the thicknesses the same so you end up with transition problems.